Alan Roger Currie. The book is entitled Mode 1, Let the Women Know What You're Really Thinking. Alan Roger Currie attended Chase Elementary School in Gary, Indiana. Then my family moved out to the Miller Beach area of Gary, and where I attended Kennedy King School and graduated from Word High School, and then later attended Indiana University. Got a degree in economics, and I have a minor in theater and drama. I have a low tolerance for what I call trivial, inconsequential small talk. And I can talk about a wide range of subjects, but the key thing is, when I talk about anything, I like for it to be a subject that I'm genuinely interested in, and I feel like the party with which I'm conversing with is genuinely interested. But what I found, particularly when it comes to male-female interactions, a lot of guys will approach women and they'll say that, how often do you come here? Did you see that Cubs game? That's not really what's on that. Well, some people, it's funny you mention that, I've gotten into debates because some people say that there's an art to small talk, and that to a certain extent you should engage in pleasantly phony banter. I find that in the long run it's a detrimental thing, and here's why. A lot of times when men approach women and they engage in the small talk, for the short run they might be fine with it, but let's say a man approaches a woman, engages in 45 minutes of this trivial, inconsequential small talk, and at the end of the conversation the woman says, when he finally does say, hey, let's go out to dinner this Friday or whatever, she says, oh, you're a great guy, but I'm getting back with my ex-boyfriend this week. What the guy says is, oh man, I just wasted 45 minutes talking to her for nothing. Yeah. I've seen that situation happen dozens of times. A quadrant of what I described as 4 modes of verbal communication that I feel that men tend to operate in. I'll save mode 1 for last. I'll start off with mode 2. Mode 2 is conversational behavior that I would say is representative of your typical Mr. Nice Guy type, Mr. Perfect Gentleman. He wants to always present himself as very polite, very well-mannered. He wants to avoid saying anything that can be perceived as too provocative, too forward, controversial. He's the guy that when he leaves a woman's presence, he wants that woman to tell her girlfriends, oh, he was such a great guy, he's such a nice guy, he's a sweetheart. He doesn't want his reputation compromised in any type of manner. And that, in the short run, that can be a good thing, but it has its detriments, as I talk about in the book. I can talk about that a little later. Mode 3, that's your classic guy who, say, meets a woman. He knows he's interested in dating her and have some type of romantic interaction with her, but because of his fear of expressing that, he pretends to be content with just a platonic interaction.
What do you call
the play brother.
Yeah.
You always hear women say, yeah, I got this guy, he's like my play brother, and a lot of guys, they go with that. They'll say, yeah, I'm Linda's play brother. I'm sorry, it's bull, Gerard, man. The brother really wants to hook up with that woman in a more than platonic manner. That's mode 3. Mode 4 is when you've previously exhibited mode 2 and or mode 3 behavior, and you didn't get the reactions you wanted, you didn't get the responses you wanted, and now you're resentful. I'm sure you've run across a lot of guys who just had that chip on their shoulder towards women. I call them the misogynistic revenge seeker. They're like, oh man, all women ain't nothing. I hate all of them. Forget all of them. They ain't nothing but a bunch of, I can't stand them. So their whole attitude is antagonistic towards women because they've been hurt. They feel like they've been disrespected, excessively rejected, etc. So now they're bitter. And that's what I call the mode 4 zone. Mode 1 is when you've reached a point where you just are totally self-assured. You express yourself in a very confident manner. You're very upfront and straightforward with whatever your desires, interests, and intentions are in regards to dating. And if those interests are not reciprocated, you're basically like, so what? You move on to the next young lady. But you let your interest be known up front so that you don't waste time. Like I talked about with the small talk. Said one guy wouldn't engage in 45 minutes to an hour of small talk only to have a woman say at the end of the conversation, I'm married, or I'm getting back with my ex-boyfriend, or etc. They would know within the first 5 minutes whether they have a chance of hooking up with that woman or not. Well, that's been the kind of comment sometimes. This is what I found. It started for me, a few years ago. Because of my low tolerance for small talk, a lot of times when I would approach women, I would be very upfront, very provocatively straightforward in regards to my desires, interests, and intentions. And it was almost this pattern I would get as far as a reaction. For the first 2, 3, 4 minutes, women would kind of freak out. Excuse me? Come again? I beg your pardon? What did you say? Because most people, quite frankly, aren't used to straightforward honesty. So it would always throw them for a loop initially. But then, as the conversation would go on, they would become more relaxed. We'd be smiling, laughing. And what happened is some of my friends would see this from afar, and they say, dude, what? They would nickname it the Jedi mind trick. They said, what's this Jedi mind trick you're using? I said, what are you talking about? They said, I notice how you approach women, and initially it looked like those women are having an adverse reaction to you. Sometimes it look like they're on the verge of cursing you out. But then 10 minutes later, you got them smiling, they write down a number. And I said, I'm just very upfront and straightforward with where I'm coming from. And initially, they're not used to that. And so my older brother, Steven, he was even skeptical about it. He had heard about it from coming from. He was like, it's this Jedi mind trick thing. What's this? And I just told him, I said, I'm very straightforward. And just listening to me, he wasn't a believer. Then he saw me in action a couple of times. He said, oh, dude, you got to put this on paper. You got something going here. And so he would always encourage me to write it. I kind of would always blow it off. Finally, the first thing I did was I created this 25-page pamphlet that I called the Mode 1 Principles. And after I wrote it, honestly, didn't think too much of it. But what happened, he was a sales manager in San Diego, and he had these guys working for him. And there was 2 in particular that almost every day, he said, came in complaining about their social life, love life, sex life. And so finally, after weeks of hearing them complain, he said, hey man, you need to check out this pamphlet my brother wrote called the Mode 1 Principles. And I said, what's that about? And he gave him a nutshell. He told him it was about being more upfront, more straightforward, more self-assured. And they kind of waved their hand like, oh. Here's the thing, and I get this from a lot of guys. They said, you can't be honest with women. What are you talking about? You can't let women know what you're really thinking, which is the subtitle of my book, Let Them Know What You're Really. They're like, you can't let women know what's really. My brother was like, yes, you can. I'm telling you, I've seen my brother in action. So they reluctantly read the pamphlet. One guy, he was going on a date like once every 5 to 6 weeks. After reading my pamphlet, he started going on like 2 to 3 dates a week. The other guy, his wasn't so much about quantity. He had one particular female who he was intimidated by. He was I'm sure you know guys, they had that one woman like, I want to approach her, but I'm just scared. That's how he was. He was scared to approach the woman. He read my pamphlet, finally approached her. They ended up dating. I want to say less than a year later, they were engaged. So they came back just really lavishing that pamphlet with praise. They told my brother, they said, tell your brother to publish this as a book. He is on point with this stuff. This upfront, straightforward stuff works. They are so fearful of being perceived as too forward, too candid, too provocative. They don't want that because their main thing is they're all about being liked. They want everybody who knows them to say pleasant things about them. He's a great guy. He's a nice guy. He's so well-mannered. He's so polite, etc. They almost, I would argue, are become addicted to those flattering compliments that they don't want to say anything that they think might even in the least bit way make a woman say, what did you say? So when they first approach a woman, their first objective is to make sure that woman likes them, feels comfortable around them. Then once they know that they're liked, and then the woman feels comfortable, then that's when they're willing to say, okay, I'm interested in you, or let's go on a date, or etc. But initially, they want to do all the flattery, all that, oh, you look great today, you're such a great person, I love your personality. They want to make sure that woman is flattered. But again, one of the biggest detriments of that is a lot of times they end up engaging in conversation for 20 minutes, half hour, only to find out at the conclusion of the conversation that the woman's not interested.
Whereas mode one, he finds out when?
He finds out within the first 5 minutes. You know, a mode one cat will come in the room like, next Friday, next Saturday. The woman's like, excuse me? You're excused. Next Friday, next Saturday. We're hooking up next Friday, next Saturday. I got free, both free. And the woman was like, wow, you just come out with it. Yes, I do. See, initially, when you come like that, someone will say, aren't you cocky? Or, you know, you think you could just approach me and say, we gonna hook up next Friday, next Saturday. Who you think you are? You know, and see, the mode 2 guy doesn't want those type of criticisms and feedback. He can't handle, you know, being called cocky and all that, because he's gonna be like defensive. No, I'm not. I'm a great guy. I'm not cocky. Whereas mode 1 guy is basically like, come on with those subjective criticisms. I don't care. You know, all I care about is you and I hooking up next Friday, next Saturday. You know, so he'll let a woman get all that out. You know, all the you're so cocky, you're so forward, blah, 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 blah. But he knows ultimately, more than likely, she's going to reciprocate the interest. And in the event that she doesn't, he didn't waste any time. If she says, I'm not interested, what did he waste? 2, 3, 4 minutes? In my matrix, I kind of divide each of the 4 modes of behavior. I describe in 2 perspectives. One is strong versus weak behavior, and one is effective versus ineffective behavior. What I generally define as strong behavior is behavior that cannot be easily influenced by others. Meaning that, say you, Gerard, if you're not into drugs, and say I was heavily into using cocaine and marijuana, if I'm able to influence you to use those drugs just by you hanging around me, then to me that would mean your behavior is weak. You know, I can influence you to go rob a bank or whatever. You just can be easily influenced. Or as I was talking about subjective criticisms, you could be easily affected if I called you, you know, a jerk or whatever. Whereas a strong person, he knows who he is. You know, he knows he's not into drugs, so he can maybe be socialized around people who are using drugs, but that ain't going to influence his behavior.
So tell me about mode 3 then.
But mode 3, I divide those actually into 2 subcategories. If you read the book, there's what I call the mode 3 timid and the mode 3 target. The mode 3 timid, that's a guy, and I'm sure you've met guys like this, who are just dreadfully afraid to approach women, period. They'll go to a social event, nightclub, bar, restaurant, see an attractive woman, and say at 8 o'clock, they'll say, ooh, that woman's attractive. Fast forward to 9:30, they still sitting in the same spot saying, wow, that woman's attractive. And you're like, why don't you approach her? Oh, no, she probably already got a boyfriend. Oh, no, you know, she probably reject me anyway. Wallflower, you know, and that's a large demographic that I'm targeting with my book. And I've already helped a lot of guys in that category. Like I had a guy from London, of all places, write me and say he was that classic mode 3 timid. He would go to different bars, restaurants, look at attractive women, never approach them. Then he read my book. Now he starts approaching them. And, you know, he's gotten his share of rejection, but he said it doesn't bother him because now he's mode 1. But yeah, that's the mode 3 timid. Mode 3 target is what I like to think of as a guy who was formerly a mode 3 timid, but now because he has a great job, he's driving a Mercedes, got a house on the beach, he uses his money and material possessions as the basis for his false confidence, I call it. So what he'll do, he'll approach a woman, but what he'll immediately start talking about is what he has. He'll say, hey, you know, I have a degree from Harvard, you know, and my Mercedes is right outside, and I own a house on the beach. And 90% of his conversation will center around that, you know. Yeah, so I invest in a lot of stocks and bonds. I'm going to be what? Because he thinks that's going to impress the woman. But then he's still reluctant to tell that woman he's interested. Even if the woman asks him, are you interested? He'll say, no, I'm just looking for a good friend. if there's one chapter I get the most feedback from women, is chapter 6. And that's when I introduced the terms of what I refer to as the wholesome pretender and the erotic hypocrite. A wholesome pretender, that's the woman who knows, honestly, that she kind of has her wild side, her kinky side, or if at minimum, she will occasionally indulge in casual sex. But publicly, she will give off the impression that she's Little Miss Innocent, Little Miss Wholesome, that she will only have sex within the context of a serious committed relationship. So if you were a guy who say was more one with her and say your only interest was casual sex, and you approach, initially she's going to give you that adverse reaction, like, oh my God, what did you say? I don't believe you, talking about having casual sex with me. But honestly, really, that's just a test to see if you really got the backbone to stick by what you say. So the worst mistake you can make with a wholesome pretender, if you immediately were to apologize, like, oh, did I make you feel uncomfortable? See, they're going to eat you alive. But if you come at them with, yeah, I said it, and they'll keep testing you, then they'll relax in the conversation. EH is a variation of the wholesome pretender, only she's more manipulative than a wholesome pretender, more materialistic. EH is a type of woman that would actually date, and I would say in some cases marry, a guy that she's really not attracted to. Going back to that Mode 3 Target type guy, because honestly, I've met women like this. Particularly when I lived in Los Angeles, I used to work for some of the movie studios. I worked with some women who were just gorgeous. And I would notice that they were married to guys or dating guys that had the trappings, the Porsche, the Ivy League degree. But I could tell just from talking to them that they weren't really interested in a guy. Matter of fact, a couple of them, they would have other guys coming to visit them that were more raw, maybe tattoo, earring on a motorcycle, but they didn't have the trappings. So I would ask them, I say, why are you dating or why are you married to this guy, but on the side? They say, oh, because he got the great job. He got the financial stability that I want. Oh, man, they going to get manipulated for days. Exactly. When you exhibit Mode 1 behavior, one of the things I found, it makes you much more capable of identifying an EH very quickly. You'll know within your first conversation if a woman is an EH. I had a presentation for a singles organization in Chicago, and I can tell certain things I said really enlightened the crowd who was listening. And I would say probably one of the top 3 things I said that really had people, rubbing their chin and shaking their heads like, is I made the point that I found through my experience and observation that the only way you can really be manipulated is if deep down you're trying to manipulate someone yourself. In other words, when you're upfront and straightforward with your interest, then it is next to impossible for a person to manipulate. Let me give you a couple examples. Let's say I wanted to borrow $1,000 from you, and I just come out and say, Gerard, I want to borrow $1,000. You're in a position where you either can say yes or no. Now let's say I wanted to borrow $1,000 from you. This would be kind of what a Mode 2 guy would do. Instead of coming out straightforward and saying that, I say, hey Gerard, you want me to wash your car for you? You're like, oh sure, go ahead. Hey, I know you're busy. You want me to do some groceries for you? You say, hey, okay, go ahead. You thinking, hey, this guy's being great. So I'm trying to do these favors to butter you up. Then after I do, say, 5 favors for you, I say, hey, by the way, can I borrow $1,000? You're like, oh, hell no. See, now I'm bitter. I'm like, man, I washed his car. I did the groceries. But did you ask me to? No, I was trying to manipulate you. Number one, as I've just mentioned, you cannot be manipulated by women. You're not being manipulative. You don't waste time. And a woman knows clearly what your interests are. There's no vagueness. There's no ambiguity. She's, because sometimes a man went there for a woman, she's like, is he interested? Not interested? Like a lot of times, guys will assume because they ask a woman, say, out to lunch or dinner, that automatically means that woman knows he's interested. But I've heard a lot of women say, oh, I thought he was just being nice. A woman with a boyfriend will accept a lunch date because she think the guy just being nice. Asking a woman to lunch is not the same thing as saying I'm interested in dating you. And what I'm saying is, if you are interested in dating someone, you need to just straightforwardly say, hey, my name's Ralph. I'm interested in dating you. How can that happen? Alan Roger Currie. The book is entitled Mode 1, Let the Women Know What You're Really Thinking. It's available on Amazon.com, Borders.com, BarnesandNobles.com, and other online sites. Mode 1, let the women know what you're really thinking. Alan Roger Currie.
Thank you, Mr. Curry. Appreciate it.